We're going to go over the Ruby Hero Awards tonight. I've got Nathaniel Bibbler here to be my Vanna White for the evening. Right. We've got three different parts. First, we're going to do the Ruby Hero Awards. Then I've got my announcement, I got to do my but just one more thing sort of thing. And then talk a little bit about validation and recognition. But like Chad said, this is the fourth year we've been doing the Ruby Hero Awards. And as you can see, some of the people here up on the screen that have received awards in the past couple of years. And what's really interesting is that you look at some of these people here, and some of them you go, oh, they're really well known. Why did they win an award? But really, when they won the award, they weren't that well known. And now a lot of these people have gone on, and everybody knows their name. So the Ruby Hero Awards was sort of put together, I was doing this podcast and realized there was some people that didn't get as much recognition as they might deserve. People who, went above and beyond, who, were working tirelessly in their spare time, not getting much thanks. People who weren't very well known or not well known enough. People who deserved a little extra recognition that they weren't getting otherwise. So we decided to put the Ruby Hero Awards together, and here's how it works, in case you're not familiar. We put out this website called Ruby Heroes, rubyheroes.com, and we put out a call to people to nominate people they think deserve an award. So anybody can go on there, put who they want in there, and they have to give a description. So they have to type in 2 or 3 sentences of why they think they deserve an award. This year we got 465 nominations. Pretty good. But we don't want this to turn into a popularity contest. That's the last thing we want this to turn into. So what's worked every year is then we take who the public votes for, we bring it back to the previous year's Ruby Heroes, and we let them sort of duke it out, right, and make an intelligent decision, come to a unanimous decision of which 6 should get these awards, which you can see here. If they all arrived, there should actually be oops, let me click through. There should actually be 6 award winners. 5 of them should actually be here tonight. 1 of them couldn't make it, but 5 of them should be sitting here amongst us this evening. Before we get into it, I want to take a moment to thank O'Reilly for sponsoring the awards and having this awesome event. Let's give just a small hand for O'Reilly. Cool. If I call your name and you're a hero, please come up here. We'll give you an award and sort of stand up here. Then once everybody gets up here, we'll do the group shot. So I'm going to start with the guy who's not here today. So the guy who's not here today worked on Ruby Summer of Code, specifically the Simpler Ruby Deployment project, where he got an opportunity to work with Wayne Seguin on RVM. He did a bunch of stuff with RVM, supporting it, helping build it, all this stuff you see listed on the screen, and eventually helping release RVM 1.0. He's also an active in this youth organization called Youth Tree, who donates his time for developing websites to this local organization whose mission is to use creativity and fun to involve young people in volunteering. And all of a sudden, we're grooving. All right, okay. Well, we've got, he joins he helps support the Ruby on Rails local groups in his area. He's also one of the organizers of the Rails Rumble. The person I'm talking about, if you haven't figured it out yet, is Darcy Laycock. Let's have a round of applause for him. Hopefully he's watching live at home. Cool. The next guy, the next hero, wrote a bunch of open source projects you might be familiar with. If you're actually a CoffeeScript early adopter, this first project you might have used. It's called Bistro Car. Anybody? Woo! Anybody out there? Yeah, okay. Yeah, feel free to show your appreciation with your voices. The next one was Liability, which is an asset packaging library for Rack applications. The third one is Evergreen, to run JavaScript unit tests inside JavaScript. The fourth one is Carrier Wave, a simple and extremely flexible way to upload files in your Ruby applications. This is not the Ruby Hero, but does anybody know what this is? Right. So he's the guy behind Capybara. The person I'm talking about, of course, is Jonas Nicholas. All right. The next two heroes both revolve their work around documentation. One who's written a lot of documentation, and one who wrote a tool to create better documentation. Some of these heroes, I'm actually going to show you on the screen what people wrote when they wrote in to nominate them, because I think some of them are really powerful. So for this guy, here's what somebody wrote about him up here. This dude has helped me on at least 15 different occasions with odd syntax questions or general advice on IRC, and he doesn't even know who I am. He deserves a goddamn medal. This dude. Okay, the next one. His tireless dedication to making documentation not suck is commendable. This next line, I'm not making it up. He's a dude. That's a pattern, apparently. I checked this guy's score on Stack Overflow. I think this is pretty impressive. All right, so he's like helping people out every day. If you look on Rails contributors, he's about here. He's number 12 above Rick Olson, James Buck, Michael Koziarski. And most of the commits you look at that he's done all revolve on adding documentation to Rails. He's done a ton of work on the Rails guides. He's even written 2 brand new Rails guides, which aren't small. You've got the Rails initialization process, active record query interface. He even put out on his blog asking for donations so he can do more documentation for Rails. He's hardcore. He's also working on a book with Yehuda Katz on Rails 3 in action. And I even have heard from people who have bought the pre-release version and have been interacting with him, and he's been revising the book and taking feedback. And I was like, that's killer. He's also a big supporter of RailsConf. The person I'm talking about is Ryan Big. Okay, the next guy, as I mentioned, also nominated because of what he's done for documentation. But it's not so much about writing documentation, but more about how easy he's made it to write good documentation and to make it available. How many people here are familiar with Yard? Lots of people. All right, very cool. Here is something that someone wrote when they nominated this person. Yard is, yeah, I'll let you guys read it. I actually do it. That says something right there. So Yard led to another project, which I'm also curious to see how many people use, called rubydoc.info. Yeah, great stuff. The person I'm talking about, of course, is Lauren Segal. All right. So a lot of you know, hopefully everybody knows here, I know there's a lot of new people in the community, about Why the Lucky Stiff and about some of the projects that he's put forward. And the next hero that we're bringing out has sort of picked up on some of these projects out there. He's sort of helped maintain and keep up to date and improve the shoes library. He picked up and he helps maintain Hackety Hack. He also helped put out version 1.0 of Hackety Hack. And if you haven't tried out Hackety Hack, I strongly recommend you take the time to do it, just to play around with it. Because if you do, the next time you have that friend or that friend's son or even your son that says, you know, what is daddy doing at work every day? You're going to want to point him at Hackety Hack. You're going to end up pointing him at Hackety Hack because it's a great way for people to learn programming and have fun, follow a tutorial. Definitely recommend it. So this person also is a contributor to our Status, which is an open source sort of status website, kind of like Twitter. He's also a contributor to the Timeless Repository, an online blog. He's contributed lots of great articles. He's a contributor to the Changelog podcast. And he is also a big contributor to the Ruby Mendicant University, which I've been really impressed with over the past 2 years that it's been going on with all those educating new Ruby developers and contributing to open source. The person I'm talking about is Steve Klabnik. Congrats. All right. So we've got one more person if you're keeping count here. This next guy, I didn't know this till I did some research on him. He's got a PhD in theoretical physics. It's like, ooh. He even wrote some papers. I'll let you guys read these titles. These are out there. Makes you want to go and read them. But I'm like, wow. And so once I found this out about him, it made perfect sense that his first big Rails book that he put out a couple of years ago was RailsSpace. I was like, oh, RailsSpace, right? It makes sense, RailsSpace. So if you've been in Rails for a while, there's probably at least a few people in this room here that got inspired to learn Rails from RailsSpace. It actually supported, I think it was Rails 1.2.3 the book was written for. But every year we've done Ruby Heroes. If you take out the people who already won awards, he's probably got the most nominations from anybody just because so many people are grateful for the work that he's done. I went back and grabbed one of the nominations from like the first year that he got nominated from somebody who was inspired by this book. So here's what somebody said about him. It's pretty awesome. Right. And I was hearing about this in the community. People were like, yeah, I read this book, I'm doing it, and I'm part of this community, and the author's helping, and everyone's helping each other. And I just heard nothing but great things. After RailsSpace came an application called Insoshi, which I served as a great example of a Rails app. I used to tell people to go look at Insoshi if they wanted to read some good Rails code. And then he started a new project in April 2009. He started it by writing this into a Rails mailing list. He wrote this, I'm working on a new idea for a Rails tutorial book, hoping to get some feedback from this list. He wanted to make sure people were cool with his idea. And he was going through with it, and he wanted to make it sort of Creative Commons, and make at least as much of the book, hopefully the whole book, Creative Commons. And then he got an offer from a big book publisher that said, hey, we want to publish your book, but I think what it sounds like they did, I hope he doesn't mind that I'm giving away all this stuff happened, but I think it shows his character. So he got offered a good deal from a book publisher, but they wanted almost 50% of it not to be released for free. And so he emailed sort of me and a couple other people, and he said, is this okay? I want the people who I respect to really endorse the book, but is this cool? And my response to him was, I can't really say one way or the other. Actions speak louder than words. Sort of use your best judgment. Do whatever you can. Just do it. And what he ended up doing, he wrote another email to us, and he said, basically, I decided not to do the book deal. I'm going to turn it down so that I can release this 100% for free. And I just wanted to share that because that one action shows me that makes me look at him as sort of a Ruby hero in my heart. I think that was killer, and I think it really worked out in the end because the Rails community got an awesome free online tutorial book out of it. So that's the Ruby on Rails tutorial. Some of the stuff that people have written about that are just amazing. If you take a look, here's a couple examples of that. Yeah, it's really amazing when you see this sort of feedback. And of course, the person I'm talking about, let's give him a big round of applause, is Michael Hartle. You got it. All right. So let's give one more round of applause to your 2011 Ruby Heroes. You got it. Congratulations, guys. So, but just one more thing. No, just kidding. So I want to talk a little bit about screencasting, because I think our community has always been rich in lots of screencasts. I mean, it all started out with that one, all I have to say is, whoops, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. That one screencast, David Heinemeier Hansson created, and since then, the community has sort of blossomed. All these screencasters. We've got, Peep Code, you've got RailsCast, you've got the Pragmatic Studio, put out screencasts. They got a bunch of great screencasts. Confreaks, you might not think of them as screencasting, but like all of these talks that have happened at all these conferences would have been completely lost if they wouldn't have put out a model that would allow conference organizers to record them in an affordable way. Also, like ThinkCode TV, you've got TechPub did some, you've got the SD Ruby group put out this podcast they've been doing forever. I think it goes back to like 2006. They've been putting out videos of their talks. Teach Me to Code, Charles Max Wood has been doing some killer work over there with screencasting, putting out so much work for free. You've got Remy, he's been doing some cool stuff with screencasting. You've got BDD casts. Our community really is awesome at this. Screencast.org, right? And that's not including all the individuals that have put out screencasts on their blog. Anybody from like Fabio Akita has put out like tons of these free screencasts, played around with it. Engine Yard has been putting out lots of free screencasts as well. I don't write much open source software. I've got a lot of people that work with me at MV Labs that are a lot smarter than me that produce open source software. Probably most people in this audience are smarter than me when it comes to writing code. But what I really enjoy is educating people and putting together educational material that teaches people how to write better code. That makes me feel good to put it out there. And last year when I was up on stage for the Ruby Hero Awards, I announced these Rails 3 screencasts. I think I checked before we got up there, and each one of these screencasts was probably viewed, I think, about 15,000 times. I'm just so in awe of that. That's so ridiculous to me. But it feels really good to contribute and to see that. And when I put these out, actually, when I was in the speaker's lounge, right before I was putting these out, I was having a conversation with David Heinemeier Hansson, showing him these screencasts, which I really wanted to put out. I didn't really ask permission to do everything that I was doing, so I was like, I really hope he likes it. Really hope this is cool, and sort of, making some assumptions. And I showed it to him, and he thought it was cool, but his first reaction, or his second reaction was, we really need more introductory content. I didn't realize at the time what I was creating was more for intermediate Rails developers to go from Rails 2 to Rails 3, not really for new people. And he made a really good point. If we want to keep this community strong, we need to be continuously creating new educational material, especially with how fast Rails is moving. We have to keep on doing it. So in response to that, I was like, OK, what can I do? What can we build? And so what we did in November of last year was kind of a response to that, which is Rails for Zombies. We put out this free website where people can learn Rails. And I think we checked stats on that. 42,000 people have signed up. Almost 9,000 people have finished the course. But I think it's just amazing. That sort of has evolved into something bigger. Rails for Zombies, we were like, wow, that's awesome. We need to do more of this sort of interactive learning material. And that's sort of where Code School evolved out of, that a lot of us that we're working on right now, producing more educational content. We did Rails Best Practices, which again is for more intermediate Rails developers to learn more, program in the browser, and learn and become better Rails developers. But I've been thinking more lately, I'm only one guy. It's like we're only one team. How do we get more people creating this new medium of screencasting, which I think is only going to get more popular, and more developers are going to learn that way? How can I take that knowledge and spread it and get more of you guys screencasting, right? And what keeps people from not doing it? I talked to a couple people at the conference while I was here. I'm like, what keeps you from throwing together screencasts? Have you ever thought about that? And most of them have, right? And most of them say, yeah, I've thought about it, but I wouldn't know where to start. I wouldn't know what tools to use, how to use them. So I've been wanting to, but I didn't want to. But I didn't have the time or something like that. So I started thinking to myself, what if there was a framework? What if, just like David Heinemeier Hansson created Rails as a framework for creating websites, what if I could create a framework that sort of took all the knowledge that I have and made it as easy as I know how to create really good screencasts, what would that look like? How could I teach people to do that? And so the one thing I wanted to sort of announce today, I spent the last 2 weeks working my ass off on this, is creating some documentation and a video that we're putting out for free to teach people how to screencast. We're calling it the Code School Screencasting Framework. And if you ever want to really learn how to do it, this is sort of everything that I've learned about how to do it well in an hour-long screencast. And I've got a big document that I put together that shows how to do this so that more people can create screencasts, and we can keep this community strong and growing. And that's just... Thanks. Really appreciate that. So that's the Code School Screencasting Framework. It's kind of an experiment to see sort of, what we can do. I appreciate the guys at NV Labs tolerating this experiment to see if we can get more people doing screencasting. Definitely check it out. So I want to get back to more the Ruby Heroes theme. So validation, appreciation, right? Some people come to conferences and get it. Some people speak to get these things. Some people contribute to open source projects. Everybody needs it. A lot of people need it to keep on doing what they're doing, especially if they're not getting paid for it. They're doing it in their spare time, right? So the Ruby Hero Awards, that's just one way that we, hopefully all those guys that we brought up on stage tonight will keep on doing what they're doing and, for a long time forward to keep our community strong. But what more can we do? I was trying to think, what can you do to do your part? Obviously, you can keep on contributing, keep on doing what you're doing, but I was starting to think, what can you do, like even now? What could you do at this conference to show your appreciation and contribute back to our community? Well, if you're one of these guys, one of these speakers, or one of these what I would consider luminaries sitting in the front row over here, you know where you are. For example, these guys, you could make yourself more accessible, right? It's like, if I was David Heimeyer Hansen, I would go through and I would make it my mission to meet every single person in this conference. There's a challenge, right? Shake their hand and just get to know them. Because I know it would probably make some of those people's whole sort of travel here worthwhile, right? One guy who does this, one guy who totally does this, is Gary Vaynerchuk, who was here last year. Some of you guys were here. Did a killer talk. But I saw him at a conference one day. He was a keynote speaker at that conference. He went to the after party. I swear to God, he was going around to every single person in that after party and just saying, hey, how's it going? What are you working on? We all have one thing in common here, and for Rails, we've got Rails in common, right? It's the easiest icebreaker ever. So, what are you doing with Rails, right? Easiest thing ever. If you want to show your appreciation for speakers, or you see a really good talk, really easy way to show your appreciation. You don't have to approach anybody. Rate the talk. Go on and rate the talk. Every time you rate the talk, really, the speakers go back and they read this stuff. So if you see something that inspires you, please take the time, go back, rate the talk. Another way that I've sort of said, every year I've done the Ruby Hero Awards up here that I've said, told people to do, is make it your mission to thank at least 3 people while you're here at the conference. Because no matter how much recognition or appreciation you think that somebody gets for the contributions they do, it's probably a lot less than you think, right? It's lonely, when you go back, people work in, dark places when they go home without too many people, right? Or even the people they know what they do, so they don't get that much feedback. Like, great job with that open source project. So if somebody did an open source project which helped you in your job or helped you in your spare time on a project, please take the time while you're here, go up to them and say, thank you for doing what you did, or for, creating Rails or creating Yard, just thank you for doing that. It's really sort of, help me with this one project, and then meet them. Yeah, so thank 3 people, or if they did a good talk, or if they did something nice, thank 3 people. It'll really make the difference. It'll make this whole convention sort of worthwhile, drive our community forward, increase that positive energy. Thanks. Lastly, another way that I like to give people recognition, me and Nathaniel and a couple of guys at NV Labs and a couple of guys, Les Hill and the guys from Code Sherpas, David Bach, and a couple of the other, I guess, ex-HashRocket guys, helped me put together Ruby 5. It's a twice-weekly news podcast. Another way that I like to give people recognition is by telling their story. So if you've got a gem or some sort of driver or a library or a blog post or a tutorial or a screencast that you want people to know about, that you put out this week, not enough people know about, but you think it's really useful, I want to help you get more recognition. Come find me during the conference. I've got a little microphone. I'd be happy to record you, get you on Ruby 5, get more people coming back to your project, watching your tutorial, contributing to your open source project. Let me help you. Please find me. Send me an email or send me a tweet. But that's all I've got. I really appreciate you guys taking your time to come and hear me speak. And thanks to all the Ruby heroes. And keep on doing what you're doing. And have a great night. Thanks.